The first time you hear someone bought a car on their phone, it doesn't register. Your neighbor mentions it like it's nothing. Ordered a Tesla, it showed up on a truck, never sat in a waiting room. You think, that's not how cars work. Because for most of your life, buying a car has meant going to a dealer, talking to a salesman, waiting for hours to sign papers you barely read because you're 3 hours in and you just want to go home. Your parents did this. Your grandparents did this. It's an American ritual. But here's the part most people don't know. In most of the United States, you still can't legally buy a new car directly from the company that made it. Not because it's impractical, not because consumers don't want it, but because state laws require the sale to run through a dealership. In this video, I'll show you how dealerships got those laws written, why they've held on for so long, and why EVs and online buying are starting to break the whole system. So let's start with the obvious question. Why can't you just order a car from the manufacturer the way you order everything else? Think about it. Apple designs the phone, you buy it from Apple. IKEA designs the couch, you order it, it arrives. Nike makes the shoes, you click a button, they show up at your door. Cars don't work that way, and most people assume that's because they're expensive, complex, or dangerous. But that assumption is wrong. You can buy a boat directly from the manufacturer. Same with a private aeroplane, a motorcycle, or industrial equipment worth millions of dollars. But a Honda Civic? That requires a middleman, by law. Here's what I mean. In most of the US, it's actually illegal to buy a new car directly from the manufacturer. Ford can build the car, GM can build the car, Toyota, Honda, BMW, all of them can manufacture vehicles. But state franchise laws prohibit them from selling those vehicles to you. Doesn't matter if the factory is 20 miles away, the manufacturer could be begging to sell it to you directly, and you could be begging to buy it. Doesn't matter. The sale must pass through an independently owned dealership. And that's not just tradition, it's statute, written into state law, enforced by courts, defended by lawyers, backed by one of the most effective lobbying operations in the country. Now, these laws didn't come out of nowhere. They actually started as a way to protect small businesses. In the 1930s, the Big Three, GM, Ford, Chrysler, dominated American car sales. They were industrial gods. Dealers were small, local, family-owned. They had no leverage. The manufacturers could dictate terms, force them to swallow unwanted inventory, undercut them with factory-owned stores, terminate contracts on a whim. A dealer could build a business over 20 years and lose it in an afternoon because some executive in Detroit didn't like his sales numbers. It was a knife fight, and the dealers were showing up with plastic spoons. So they organized, they lobbied, they won. State by state, franchise laws were passed to shield local dealers from the manufacturers who could crush them. It made sense. In 1955, when dealers were mom-and-pop operations with a lot, a showroom, and a mechanic named Sal who knew your father. When manufacturers were industrial behemoths that could squeeze any individual dealer into paste without breaking a sweat. But something happened over the next 70 years. The dealers got big, really big. The top 10 dealership groups in America now generate around $100 billion in annual revenue, more than any individual car manufacturer. AutoNation, Penske, Lithia Motors, Group 1 Automotive, these aren't family businesses with Sal in the garage. They're publicly traded corporations with lawyers, lobbyists, and legislative strategy teams. The mouse became the lion, and the lion kept the mouse's legal protections, a $1.2 trillion industry defending a monopoly while pretending it's still the underdog. Taking a quick pause. If you're enjoying this so far, I'd be grateful for a like. Let's get back to it. But selling new cars is barely profitable. New vehicle sales account for 58% of a dealership's revenue, but less than 26% of its gross profit. Margins on a new car? Often 2.5%, sometimes negative. That gleaming sedan in the window, the one they're pretending costs $45,000 but will somehow land at $52,000 after fees, it's a loss leader in a building full of traps. So where does the money come from? Two places. First, the service department. Service and parts are 12% of revenue, but nearly half the gross profit. Margins above 45%. Oil changes, brake jobs, warranty repairs, that mysterious rattle you've been ignoring. The new car you bought? It's a subscription to a decade of service visits. You're not buying a product, you're entering a relationship with a service bay that will extract value from you until the odometer rolls over. The car is the razor. Service is the blades. Second, and this is where it gets dark, the F&I office, finance and insurance. That cramped back room where you sign the final papers after you've mentally committed, after you've been there 3 hours, after your resistance has been ground down to dust, and you'd sign almost anything just to escape with your keys. F&I is 5% of revenue. Profit margins, 85 to 95%. They make roughly $2,400 in gross profit per vehicle, not from the car, but from extended warranties, gap insurance, paint protection, fabric coating, tire packages, key replacement plans, and financing markups you can't comparison shop because the numbers are deliberately confusing and you're too exhausted to think. The thing that feels like paperwork, the boring part, the bureaucratic part, the part where you're signing your name over and over while someone speed reads disclosures, that's the most profitable moment in the entire transaction. 3 hours of waiting, burnt coffee, the salesman vanishing to check with his manager. It all leads to that room. A trained specialist, 15 minutes, products you didn't know existed at prices you can't verify. You're tired. You just want to leave. The dealership isn't a car store. It's a finance office with a parking lot attached. The car is the bait. The F&I office is the trap. When Tesla announced in 2007 that it would sell cars directly to consumers, no dealers, no middlemen, just a website and a delivery truck, the automotive establishment responded the way any protected monopoly responds to an existential threat. With lawyers. Texas sued, Michigan sued, Connecticut, Arizona, New Jersey, lawsuit after lawsuit, legislative battle after legislative battle. The National Automobile Dealers Association mobilized like it was going to war. State associations deployed lobbyists by the squadron. The argument was always consumer protection. Without dealers, who would service the cars? Who would honor warranties? Who would stand between the vulnerable consumer and the big, bad manufacturer? But the real fight was simpler, and everyone in the room knew it. Tesla was threatening to prove that the dealership model was optional. And if it was optional, then the $2,000 per car margin that dealers extracted wasn't a service, it was a toll. A tax on car buyers that existed because the law said it had to. Tesla won some battles, lost others. In Texas, where a massive gigafactory now operates outside Austin, the factory that builds the cars, you still cannot buy a Tesla directly. Cars manufactured in Texas must be shipped out of state, then shipped back to Texas buyers who purchase them online. The factory is in Texas. The customer is in Texas. The car is made 20 miles from the customer's house. But the transaction must legally pretend to happen somewhere else, because the franchise laws demand their tribute. You cannot make this stuff up. By 2024, Tesla was operating 276 company-owned stores across 43 states. $97.7 billion in annual revenue. Customers bought cars like they bought iPhones. Online, transparent pricing, no haggling. No 4-hour ordeal, no back office trying to sell them fabric protection. Satisfaction scores for the buying experience dramatically higher than traditional dealers. Not a little higher, a different universe. The dam didn't break, but it started leaking. Rivian followed the model. So did Lucid. Every time a customer ordered a car from their couch and watched it arrive on a flatbed, the dealership experience looked a little more like what it was. A relic. A system designed for a world where information was scarce, alternatives were impossible, and consumers had no choice but to submit to the ritual. The American auto dealership industry employs over 1 million people, generates $1.2 trillion in annual revenue. Dealers are major local taxpayers, political donors, community fixtures. In Washington, they outspend the NRA. There's a dealer in every congressional district, not a metaphor, a fact. They sponsor Little League, they're on the Rotary Board, they're woven into the fabric of local life in a way tech companies never will be. 1 million jobs, a $1 trillion industry, built on 2 income streams that are about to get squeezed from both ends. Electric vehicles have 90% fewer moving parts than internal combustion engines. No oil changes, no transmission fluid, no exhaust systems, no timing belts, no spark plugs, no fuel injectors, no serpentine belts, no radiator flushes. The entire maintenance schedule that keeps service bays profitable, the schedule that makes you come back every 5,000 miles like clockwork, shrinks to almost nothing. EVs need tyres and brakes, but the gravy, the recurring revenue, the $100 oil change, the $2,000 transmission repair that pays for 2 technician salaries, it evaporates. The blades disappear. The razor becomes worthless. And when you buy a car online with transparent pricing, the back office disappears too. No 4-hour negotiation that leaves you too tired to think. No exhausted customer ready to sign anything just to escape. The entire architecture of the F&I profit machine depends on 2 things: information asymmetry and buyer fatigue. Direct sales eliminate both. The trap springs on nothing. In September 2025, Tricolor Holdings, the 7th largest independent used car chain in America, filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Not Chapter 11, Chapter 7, liquidation. 65 locations closed overnight. 45,000 customers left in chaos, not knowing where to make payments, not knowing who owned their loans, not knowing if their warranties meant anything. The subprime lending model collapsed as delinquencies surged. That's not a Tesla problem. That's a consumer credit problem meeting a business model problem, meeting a demographic problem, meeting an industry running on borrowed time. The numbers are ticking up faster than a taximeter in rush hour traffic. Every EV sold is a customer who needs less service. But dealers make their real money on service, so they have no incentive to push EVs, which is why, according to multiple surveys, many dealership salespeople actively steer customers away from electric vehicles. They're protecting their commission structure, protecting the service revenue stream, protecting the business model. But customers who want EVs go to Tesla, go to Rivian, go to places where the experience is better, and no one tries to talk them out of it. Traditional dealers lose not just the service revenue, but the sale itself. The more they protect the old model, the faster they accelerate their own obsolescence. A doom loop with no exit. Meanwhile, 54% of Gen Z says car ownership is important to them. Compare that to 69% of boomers. Millennials drive 8% less than previous generations. 45% of Gen Z and 51% of millennials say they'd consider going car-free by 2030. The car as status symbol, as freedom machine, as American birthright, that emotional pull is weakening with every generation. The people walking into showrooms, the ones who still want the ritual, who still think haggling is part of the fun, they're aging out. The cafes are full, but mostly with grey hair. You can't build a growth industry on customers who are dying. Every time someone buys a car online and has it delivered, they tell friends, "You should try it. No haggling, no waiting, it just showed up." Every time someone spends 4 hours at a dealership feeling cheated, they tell friends too. Never again. I felt like I needed a shower afterward. Word of mouth compounds. The reputation of the dealer experience, already poor, already the butt of jokes, already something people dread, degrades further. New entrants with better models attract the most profitable customers. Good credit, research done, knows what they want. Dealers get left with the buyers who can't get approved anywhere else. High risk, low margin, high delinquency. The customer base deteriorates even as the business model weakens. The spiral tightens. Dealer lobbying has been remarkably effective for decades because it keeps the issue invisible. Franchise laws seem like natural background, like weather, like something that's always been there. The moment consumers realize they're legally prevented from buying a car the way they buy everything else, the political calculus shifts. When Tesla opened a store on tribal land in Connecticut to bypass state law, it made national headlines. Every workaround, every absurdity, cars made in Texas shipped through another state to get back to Texas, erodes the legitimacy of the protection. And once legitimacy goes, the laws eventually follow. Not immediately, not without a fight, but eventually. The dealers who lobbied for franchise protection weren't wrong in 1955. They were small businesses facing corporate giants who could destroy them on a whim. The laws they won were reasonable responses to real power imbalances. They were protecting livelihoods, families, communities. They were the good guys. The manufacturers who accepted the system weren't villains either. They offloaded inventory risk, customer service, local marketing, the messy work of dealing with individual consumers to dealers who knew their communities. It worked. For a long time, it worked beautifully. The consumers who endured bad experiences weren't stupid. They had no alternative. You wanted a new car? You went to a dealer. That was the only path. The friction was annoying but invisible, like air, like gravity. You didn't question it because there was nothing to compare it to. And now an alternative exists. Not because anyone decided to kill dealerships, not because of some master plan, but because technology made a different model possible. And companies were willing to fight the legal battles, endure the lawsuits, find the workarounds, prove another way could work. The internet let customers research prices before walking in. Direct delivery let manufacturers reach buyers without a middleman. And suddenly, the system that seemed natural, inevitable, permanent, it looked like what it always was: a choice. An architecture, a toll booth on the road to car ownership. The model was designed for information asymmetry, for a world where customers couldn't research prices online, for a world where manufacturers couldn't reach buyers directly. for a world where cars were complex enough that local expertise genuinely mattered. That world is gone. The model remains, and the gap between them widens every year, every month, every time someone orders a car from their phone and watches it arrive on a flatbed. The strong dealers will survive by getting bigger. They'll acquire the weak. Diversify into used cars, service contracts, fleet management, rental partnerships. They'll become less like car stores and more like financial services companies with automotive expertise attached. The small dealers, family-owned lots, rural franchises, places where Sal still works in the garage, will get absorbed or close. The industry shrinks but stabilizes at a smaller scale, controlled by corporate giants who can survive thinner margins because they have scale, data, and diversified revenue. This is probably what happens. It's already happening. Dealership consolidation has accelerated for years. The question is whether it happens fast enough to prevent widespread bankruptcies, or whether the transition is chaotic. A wave of closures, stranded employees, abandoned lots with weeds pushing through the asphalt, for lease signs where the family business used to be. Or the lobby doubles down. New laws get passed restricting direct sales, not just for new entrants, but for existing manufacturers trying to shift models. The transition to EVs slows, franchise protections strengthen, right to repair legislation gets blocked. Every legal and political tool deployed to extend the life of the current system. This buys time, maybe decades, but it means American consumers pay higher prices, get worse experiences, and watch as the rest of the world moves on. The tobacco industry playbook: delay the inevitable while extracting maximum value from the status quo. Let the next generation deal with the consequences. Neither path saves the million jobs. Neither path restores the model to health. Neither path brings back the world where the dealership made sense. So go back to that Saturday morning, the burnt coffee, the cable news on mute, the salesman explaining fees that shouldn't exist. That experience isn't annoying because dealers are evil or because the salesman is a bad person. It's annoying because it's a 1955 business model running on 2025 customer expectations. The friction isn't personal, it's structural. The gap between a system designed for one world and a customer living in another. The salesman? He's an employee of a system that's slowly becoming obsolete. Trying to make his numbers, pay his mortgage, survive another quarter in an industry shrinking around him. He didn't design the F&I trap. He didn't write the franchise laws. He's just trying to move metal and make rent. The waiting room isn't malicious, it's desperate. The dealership industry won't die with a bang. It will die the way most protected industries die. Slowly, then all at once. One closed lot at a time. One bankruptcy filing at a time. One customer who decides this time to just order online. 100 years of American car buying ritual unwinding in real time. And if you drive through the suburbs with your eyes open, you can already see it. The lot with too many empty spaces. The showroom with too few customers. The radio ad that sounds less like confidence and more like a prayer. The croissants are still good, but the economics, they're terrifying.